Hello everyone, I am Shivam Banka and welcome to this new video of management case study interview. The purpose of this video is to give you an understanding of how a management case study interview goes and what is expected of you in it. This video is divided into two parts. In the first part, I'll be going through the interview line by line and present an understanding as we go along. In the second part, I'll analyze the interview as a whole and provide the overall structure to it. Today, we are doing a very interesting case study interview where a client is a beverage manufacturer. Before beginning, for context, all the black text with blue background which you see is the statement of the interviewer, and all the blue text with white background you see is the statement of the candidate. Let's begin. Your client is a leading beverage manufacturer. Recently, it has been experiencing a decline in its profitability. They want you to analyze the costs. So this is a typical profitability case study interview, and a typical profitability case study interview is divided into three parts. In the first part, you understand more of the company, the competition, the industry as a whole. In the second part, you try to structure the situation and figure out where exactly is the problem coming from. And then the third part, you provide recommendations and solutions. So this is a typical format, but you can also adopt as you go along into interview based on the requirements. So the first line of the interviewer is also one of the most important lines because it tells you the scope of the interview. And from this, we know that our client is a leading beverage manufacturer, and recently they have been facing a decline in profitability, and we have to figure out the cause. To begin with, I would like to know the timeline and magnitude of the decline. The decline has been observed over the past 1 and 2 years and has been around 5 to 10%. Okay, it's very recent. All right. I would now like to understand the client's business a little better. Specifically, I would like to know about their geographical presence, product segments, and parts of value chain that they operate in. Okay. Pretty valid question to understand more exactly what the client is and where exactly they operate in. They manufacture, distribute, and retail two kinds of products, fruit juices and beer across India. Okay, I think they do everything from manufacturing to retailing. Okay. Has the decline been observed in a particular product segment or both? Also, who are their major competitors in the space and have they experienced a similar decline, or is it a problem specific to the client? There is a strong competition in this industry, both in fruit, juices, and beer categories. The decline for client has been observed in the beer segment and it's specific to the client. We have pinning down the problem, so we know what the client supply chain is. We know what the situation of the competition is. We know where exactly in the business it's not in the food business, it's in the beer business the problem is coming from. So we are trying to figure out the situation where exactly is the problem coming from, and then we go more into detail of that situation. I'll begin by breaking down profits for beer business into its component parts, revenue and cost. Next, I'll identify which of these are a problem and further look into internal and external factors that they may lead uh, to a change in the revenue or the cost structure for the category. Would you like me to proceed this way? So now we are moving to the second part of the interview where we are trying to structure the problem. And in most of the cases, the profit are divided into revenue and cost, and then you go further in it. So that is what the candidate also doing. Sure, the revenues for the client have remained the same and are on par with the industry. I would like you to focus on the cost. Be straightforward, focus, don't go to the revenue. All right, to proceed with the analysis, I will look at the steps in the value chain of the client's product and narrow down the possible areas where the cost may be arising. Okay, please go ahead. This is also one of the interesting approach where you divide the whole value chain into different into its parts to come up with exhaustive list and not miss out on any points to where the problem is coming from. For beer manufacturing firm, the value chain can be broken down into raw materials procurement, processing, packaging, storage, distribution, and retail. Additionally, there will be a transportation between these steps. Is there any step that might be missing and you want me to focus on? So it's one of the easiest value chain breakdown is a manufacturing firm because it's exactly the same irrespective of what they are manufacturing. So it is broken down into raw materials procurement, then processing it, packaging it, storing it, its distribution, and then its retail. And so it is almost the same in every manufacturing firm. So you can just go away straight without personalizing it to this particular industry. Well, to answer that, I have a question for you. Typically, when uh, you go for beer at a place, how do you dispose of the bottle? Okay, this is out of nowhere. The interviewer has asked a very random question. Okay, so you have to be prepared of anything can happen, anything on the spot of such questions. You have been judged on how do you think on spot, a very realistic answer to it. I leave it at the restaurant. I presume the restaurant either throws those bottle away or passes it forward for recycling. Okay, so this means that there could be another step in the process after sale, returning the bottles and reverse logistics. Okay, the interview wants it to tell the client that you have missed the point where you actually recycle the bottles and return the bottles. Bingo. Uh, um, Bingo. Please proceed with your analysis. Thanks. Has the client observed a cost increase in any particular step of this value chain? The packaging costs for the client have risen. Has the client made any recent changes to the packaging? Yes, the bottle design has been slightly altered. All right. Then the increase can be driven by the increase in per bottle price by the vendor, which is likely because of the bottle design and has altered, or by the increase in number of bottles we purchase. Do we have an understanding of which of these two has increased for the client? The unit prices have not changed. The number of bottle purchase has increased. Okay, so it seems like though the revenue has stayed constant, which means that unless the client has changed product prices, the number of bottles sold would have remained almost same. Still, the number of bottles purchased has increased. Now, based on our discussion so far, the packaging of the client could be sourced in three ways: in-house manufacturing of bottles, purchases from vendors, and refilling of the returned bottles. Which sources does the client use, and has the increase been observed in any particular category? The client does not manufacture bottles in-house, only purchases and refills. The purchase of bottles has increased. Okay, so my hypothesis at this point is that the increase in purchase of bottles has is because of the decrease in refilled bottles. Reasons being, as the refilled bottles would logically be lesser cost than purchased bottles, the client would most likely prefer to have maximum refilled bottles, which is why the increase in purchase of new bottles have to be driven by the decrease in refilled bottles. To understand the decline in the number of refilled bottles, I would look at the reverse logistic chain of the bottles. After consumption, one would typically return the bottles to the store or restaurants. Then these would be collected together and then transported to the company storehouses. Does this approach seem okay to you, or should I relook at it? It is all right. Let us go forward and test your hypothesis. The bottles, as you mentioned, after being returned to the stores by the customers, are collected by the district level collector, who then transported to the client's warehouse. Okay, so we are understanding what is the reverse logistic looks like. Okay, so the decrease in the number of bottles returned could happen at multiple points within the process. It could be because of the decrease in number of bottles returned by the customers, which could be due to things like issues with ease of returning, or maybe due to changed bottle design. Customer would like to keep the bottles and reuse on their own. The decrease could also be because of the number of bottles returned by shops, which might be possible if they found some cheaper recycling alternatives or reselling options, etc. It could also be because of losses on the way of transportation, or losses in the client's warehouse. Is there any particular category would you like me to focus on? So everything is correct other than this point. If the shopkeeper found a cheaper recycling alternative, I think for the shopkeeper it might be more beneficial if he finds a recycling alternative which pays him more than what the client is paying. So that could also be one of the reasons which was not covered. But I think the candidate covered most of the reasons which could be possible causes for the lesser return of bottles. Yes, I would like to dig deeper in the transportation losses. Okay, so the transportation losses could be intentional or unintentional. The intentional category is where the transporter is intentionally reducing the number of bottles, like stealing some and reselling to other higher paying companies. And the unintentional category is where the bottles are getting damaged. Which of these factors do you want me to analyze first? Haha, okay. Very interesting. Intentional, unintentional. Okay, yeah, that is something which the client has thought on spot, which is, not in the textbook, but you have, labeled your thoughts so that it's very easy to convey what you're thinking. Assume that our partners are all trustworthy and we have foolproof contacts to protect us against such thefts. Go ahead and analyze the unintentional category. Okay, so the damage of bottles can be inflicted at 3 points: loading, transfer, and offloading. In case of loading, factors like rough handling could affect. In case of transporting, many road drivers, etc., related factors could be responsible. In case of offloading, factors like changing in the offloading bin could be the reason. Onloading, offloading are smooth. These employees are seasoned and responsible. Okay, then it has to be the transfer. During transfer, there could be two kinds of factors that could affect the losses: internal and external. Internal factors are one that are internal to the bottle, and likewise, external factors are external to the bottle. I would like I will look at the external factor first. Has there been any change in the route, vehicle, driver, container? Nope, everything is the same. Okay, then I'll analyze the internal factors. The bottles inside the truck could be getting damaged because of the collision between each other and because of falling down. Now, since the design of the bottle has changed, it is likely that the new design is more prone to toppling due to the changed fitting within the crates, which were fit for earlier bottles. Increased collision could also occur due to similar reasons. Great. So, how do you suggest we manage this? I would like to structure my recommendation. So I think we are in the third part of the interview where we are giving us recommendations and solutions and ending the interview. So I'd like to structure my recommendations into two parts: reducing the decline in the number of bottles lost and newer ways to reduce cost of the bottles. Ways to reduce decline. Redesign better crates to avoid collision and falling of bottle. Another way could be to design a method to horizontally store bottles in the truck to reduce the chances of falling, ensuring that the truck goes completely full so that there is lower degree of freedom for the bottles and they don't move from their place or fall collide. Consumers can be incentivized to return more bottles through ad campaigns, environment cause cautious communication offers, art installations, etc. Ways to reduce cost is look for recycling options through the vendor. For example, selling the bottles back to the vendor for recycling. This income can offset the purchase cost. Uh, Look at other packaging materials, probably like tin cans, however, which would also involve a significant marketing effort. Okay, thanks for your suggestions. We can now close the case. So I think suggestions, the candidate really went off the grid and not just provided solutions for the problem identified, but also gave very generic solutions for other problems which were not identified during the case, and this is not a good sign. If you have identified a problem and you give a list of suggestions which are not related to the problem, the interviewer might think you're just not being focused on the scope or problem identified, and you're giving suggestions generally, and it just loses you know the value or the importance of the valid suggestions. So please don't do that and only give suggestions for the problem which is identified. So that was the interview. What I loved about this interview is that it was pretty well structured, and the candidate was able to structure his thoughts very analytically and convey it to the interviewer and figure out the problem very fast without going here and there. The suggestion part was a little bit unneeded points were included in it, but other than that, the interview was pretty well done. So we'll move to the second part of the interview where I'll analyze the interview as a whole. Okay, it's also very important to maintain very clear and crisp notes during the interview because sometimes at the end of the interview, the interviewer might ask for your notes and he should be able to understand everything in one glance. So, interviewee notes. Include returning of bottles or reverse logistic in the value chain. Increase in purchase cost can be driven by increase in bottle cost or number of bottles purchased. Increase in bottle purchase is due to decrease in refilling of returned bottles. Transportation losses can happen at three stages: loading, unloading, and transfer. Some case facts were beverage manufacturer dealing in two kinds of products: fruit juice and beer across India. Client specific decline over the past 1 and 2 years. Focus on profits from beer. Focus on cost side. Packaging has changed and packaging costs have increased. So one of the very important points in your notes has to be the structure which you design for your case, which is also something which the interviewer looks for after the interview. So a typical profitability question it was, and it was divided into revenue and cost. We were told to focus on the cost side. All the entire value chain of the cost was broken into raw material, manufacturing, packaging, storage, and distribution. The problem was on the packaging side. Packaging is made up with cost per bottle and number of bottles purchased. The problem was here, and it was in the refilling of the returned bottles. The the uh, the value chain or the start to end point of refilling of bottles was tracked, which was from customers return it to store return is to district level collector, and then it comes to the warehouse. The problem was in this collection area and more specifically in the transportation of that district level connection. As the Canada divided transportation into intentional and unintentional, the problem was in the unintentional part. No one was doing it anything. No one was doing anything by intention. And in the in analyzing the unintentional part, we have analyzed the supply of the bottle, which was during transportation, which was onloading, transfer, and offloading. Problem was on the transfer side and was not on the external factors. It was more on the internal factors, which was the bottles were getting uh, were falling and colliding and getting damaged during transportation. So some of the recommendations provided by the candidate was redesign crates or design a method to horizontally store bottles in the truck to avoid collisions and falling of bottles. Ensuring that the truck goes completely full so that there is lower degree of freedom for the bottles and they don't move from the place and fall or collide. Consumers can be incentivized to return more bottles through ad campaigns, environment cautious communication offers, and art installation, etc. Look at the recycling options to the vendor. For example, reselling of the bottles back to the vendor for recycling. The income can offset the purchase cost. Some of the observations for the interviews for this interview was when it comes to consumer goods, it is better to analyze the cost through value chain. That way, it is unlikely that you will miss any cost, which was done at various levels in the interview, which was done at this level, at this level, this level. You just break down the entire value chain. It is important to take interviewer buy-in to ensure that no steps are missed. Like here, it led to identification of reverse logistics. So after every assumption you make, you have to ask it, and then do you think it's correct, or do you want me to look somewhere else? Uh, re- Relating previous findings with analysis at later stages to crucial. Fair enough. Whatever you find in the initial analysis of the first part of the interview, you have to relate it back to your the second part of the interview where you are trying to structure the problem. So it was a pretty well done, well structured case study interview. I really loved going through it because there was no confusion at any point of time and it was flowing very smoothly. And I hope you guys learned a lot from this interview. If you have a case study interview coming up, all the best for it. And if you're looking to build a career in management consulting and want to understand different uh, industry, not just crack the case study interview of those case study interview in management consulting, but also you have to understand how different industry operate in, because consultants are usually generalists. They have knowledge about all different industries, and uh, you have to think on first principle basis on how to solve a problem. So having some knowledge of industry is also very helpful. And going through these interviews gives you a first of all understanding of how to crack an interview, and also give you understanding of an introduction to a different industry which you have not experienced before. So it's a very good habit to watch one video every day, and I will be uploading one video every day. So do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any. And with that, I would like to say have a good day and thank you for watching.